This is a quick video on how to use the terrain tools in Unity. First of all, I believe you need one of the latest versions in Unity. That would be 2021.1.8 or above, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, I'm using one of the latest here, so that should be available. The first thing you might have to do is to go to Project Settings, and in the Package Manager, sometimes you need to have this one enable pre-release packages. If you don't find it in your package in your package managers, otherwise should be fine. Then you go to Windows Package Manager and make sure that you have the terrain tools installed. Let me look into the Unity registry. Okay, terrain tools. Again, if this is not available here, you might have to do what I just showed you before, by looking into the pre-release packages. I have it installed already, so I don't have to install it anymore. So now to start using the terrain tools, you need to go to Window, Terrain, and here you have Terrain Toolbox. So when you click here, you get this window, which is the terrain toolbox that you can dock anywhere, and then you will have the terrain tools available for you. So the first thing you have to do in order to create a terrain, it is to create a base geometry or a base terrain. So here you have the general options. That would be how big is your terrain in meters. In my case, it's like 500, which is quite a lot, but just stick to these numbers for now. Then you have the terrain height and the start position. You can also start with a height map. We can cover this in a different video. Now I'm just starting from scratch. So once you have some numbers here that you are happy with, you just go down here and click on create. And this, let me go to my scene view. This is going to create a base terrain, which is completely flat for now. And again, this is like 500 meters by 500 meters. It's quite a big terrain. And from here, you can start working on the shape and the volumes of your terrain. So as you can see here in the hierarchy, there is like a collection or a group that is called terrain group 0, and then inside it is the actual terrain. So this is just a container and this is the actual terrain. So when you select the terrain, you can see in the inspector, you have these tools here. So it starts with create a neighbor terrain, then you can do paint terrain, paint trees, paint details, and terrain settings. So here is kind of the size of the terrain as we discussed already. So you can change it at any time. So if I say here 1,000 kilometers, then I'm going to get like a terrain that is twice as width. I'm going to set it back to 500. And usually the first thing you would like to do is go to the paint terrain. And here you can start painting. So there are, first of all, multiple operations. So if you click in this drop-down menu, you have different operations that you can do. Like you can go to Sculpt, you can go to Effects, Erosion, and raise or low terrain, and so on. So I'm gonna set this one to raise or lower terrain. And by the way, these are, I guess, common tools that you find in other packages as well. So you might be familiar with all of these. I'm gonna say that even though these tools are great, I don't think I would use them to create a high fidelity terrain. I would stick probably to a software that can handle terrain generation a little bit better. And that can be any software that has been designed for terrain creation. In my case, I would probably use Houdini with height fields. But the good thing about these terrain tools in Unity is they are interactive and they work in real time and they don't rely in effects or for doing erosion and that kind of thing as you would do in Hightwist and Houdini. It's just a different approach. So I'm going to set this one to raise or lower terrain. And now here you can select a brush. And it comes with multiple brushes. And you can also click on new brush and create your new brush. And these are usually 16-bit images. So, you know, they have also like positive and negative values. So with any of these brushes selected, here you have a little bit of options for the brushes, like the strength, the size, the rotation, and then you have a little bit of randomness here. So if you paint, you are basically sculpting a terrain. If you paint with control selected, then you will be doing the opposite, kind of lowering the terrain. So you can actually get rid of everything that you painted. And again, this is a little bit sensitive, so make sure you're using small values. So in that way, you know, you can just start sculpting the terrain. Of course, if you change the brush to something with a little bit more high frequency, like this noise, then you will be getting like bumpy terrains. With Shift, you can smooth the effect. As in any other software, I would not recommend to use smooth a lot because it is not actually smooth, it is a blur. And by doing that, you would lose some details. But yeah, I mean, with this, you can just create terrains. I'm not gonna make anything pretty here, okay? Just gonna show you the tools. And from here, you can just try different effects. So if you go to Sculpt, noise, for example, then you would be adding like noise. This is also quite sensitive, so make sure that you set this one, the brush strength quite low, and then you can start adding like a little bit of high frequency noise where needed. And it works also like downside as well. So you can just add things, or you can remove, or you can push in or push out. And there are other things like clone, bridge. You can use this for different things. Erosions, you have hydraulic, thermal, and wind. So let's say if you set that one to hydraulic, then you're gonna get these, you know, erosion based on water, basically, which looks pretty cool. You have different type of erosion. So if you can set this one to thermal, for example, then it's a different kind of erosion, probably more suited to whatever you're doing. I mean, just common terrain tools creation effects, basically. Yeah, I mean, just give it a try because there are multiple things that you can do here. But most of the time, you're going to be working with the sculpt effects, erosion, and raise and lower. Okay, so let's pretend this is our terrain. We're happy with the look of it. Gonna make some kind of path, maybe here. Okay, so this is our terrain. If you use shapes like this, of course, you're gonna get like a very very hard effects that you can try to smooth a little bit if you want to, but this is kind of how it looks. Right. Once you're happy with the shape and the volume and the features of your terrain, and of course this is a very quick thing, so it doesn't look any good, but you get the idea. Then you can move to the operation to paint textures. And this is actually pretty nice because it will use different materials. Those materials need texture inputs. Most likely that would be albedo maps, normal maps, height maps, and a mask map. And then you can layer in between those materials. So with this one set to paint texture, here, down here, I can see layer palette, which is empty. So I can just click on add layer. And here I have a few materials already. So let's say that I choose this one, rock terrain layer. Now we have this applied to everything. Here you have tiling. So if you set this one to, I don't know, 10, it's going to tile more. And if I set it to 50, it is going to tile less. So this is basically how you would start, just by kind of covering the whole terrain with some kind of base texturing. So this base material, as you can see here, it is made of a color texture, which is this one, normal, and the mask. And this mask is quite important. This one here. If we open this one, so in Explorer, let me try to open this one with Photoshop. This is similar to what we use for, oops, sorry. So in Explorer, open with Photoshop. So this mask is similar to what we use with PBR shading, meaning that it's a packed textures. So there is multiple channels in the same file, multiple textures in the same file embedded in the different channels. But it's a little bit different than other than the PBR texture that we use. So in here, what we have in the red channel is the metalness. That's why this one is black, because that terrain is supposed to be non-metallic. Then in the green channel, we have the ambient occlusion. In the blue channel, we have the height map or displacement, which by default is not being used in the terrain system, but you can enable it by, tessellating your geometry. And then in the alpha, we have the smoothness or the inversion of the roughness channel. So it's slightly different than the PBR mask material that we use with regular shaders, but essentially it is the same. It is just a packed texture. Okay, so now we can, let's say, create a new layer. So we would select like whatever, like this texture, for example. And here we can just configure that one, right? So we can just here and add a normal map and the mask map, and also play with the tiling and the offset. I'm gonna remove that layer. That is in case you want to create layers from scratch. If you already have them created, then just click on add, and here are all the layers that I already have available. So I'm gonna select this grass, for example. And the order matters, of course. So right now we're seeing this one because it is on top. If we put this one on top, then we're seeing the grass. We probably need to play with the tiling. Okay, so now, of course, this is really, really off. I mean, this should be like way smaller, right? But of course, that's the point with terrains. They look very tiley when you look at them like this, but of course you would never look at this terrain like that. You would probably look from here, and in that case you might have to actually reduce it. But when you start seeing tilings where you have to mask it, and in a terrain, of course, that would be the case. So let's say this whole terrain looks like that, and then this path that I made here is made of grass. Then you need to paint the mask to reveal the grass over there. So to paint the mask, it is very simple. You just select the layer where you want to paint, and then you just paint. You can select like whatever brush. You have the strength as well, and you have the size, and then you paint. I'm gonna make this one a little bit stronger, a little bit bigger, so we can see it. So then you paint and you start revealing that layer underneath. And of course, they are totally independent. You can control, I don't know, the strength of the normal map. There you go. So now we have a very strong grass effect here, which looks totally ridiculous, but you get my point. And now you can add another layer, and that can be sand. Why not? And same thing, if you put it on top, you'll see the sun. It looks something like that. And if you want to reveal that one, then you would just paint. So let's pretend that I want some sun over here. I'm going to decrease the brush strength. So now I can paint something a little bit more subtle. There you go. So you can paint your sand. If you want to remove, just with control paint, I don't think there is an option to erase the mask. So if I keep painting, I'm just adding, but if I do control paint, it still adds things. So the only way that I can think of removing this is by just go to the layer that is on top and just paint here. And then you would be revealing that one. Okay, so that is basically how you do it. And this can be as complex as you want, and you know, you can create a very nice looking terrains here. Another feature that is very cool is like you can go here to paint trees, and here you can actually scatter trees on top of the surface, and you can do it like procedurally in the sense of just filling or covering the entire terrain with trees, or you can just paint where you want to add those trees. So if I go to edit trees, add tree, and here you can add trees. So I'm going to click here, and I have a few trees here. So let's say this bamboo A, add, and now what I can do is I can just make this size a little bit bigger. Here you can control the tree density. So I'm going to keep it low. Here you can randomize the height of the tree, and here you can, you know, make that randomization smaller or bigger. So if I paint, as you can see, I'm adding trees. Okay, I'm gonna undo that, and if I take my tree density all the way down to 1, or well, 10 is the minimum. If I paint, now I am adding only a few trees just by clicking there. Okay, and if I keep painting, I will add more and more and more, and as many as you need. Of course, the scale looks wonky. I mean, the scale of the trees is fine, but the scale of my tileable textures is just too big. Another thing you can do, you can click on mass place trees, and here you can just plant this amount of trees. So if I place that, as you can see, I added all those trees. I'm gonna add more like that. So now I have a lot of trees here. And of course, this is gonna impact in your performance. So let's do a little bit less, maybe like 1500. Okay, so now we have all those trees, and when we get closer, you can see the trees. And of course, now you can just keep adding. So if I just paint, I'm adding trees. If you do control paint, then you will be removing trees. If you want to add variations of trees, then you just add a new tree. I'm gonna select now, I don't know, bamboo C. Add, and now you can choose which one you want to paint with. So I'm gonna select that one and just keep painting, and just add a bunch of trees in all those areas. Gonna increase density, so I add quite a lot of them. So this is how you add trees. Great. I think I have my camera pointing nowhere. So, you can always move your camera somewhere where I have trees, like here. So now you can see some of those trees. Okay, cool. Maybe now I can add a few more just here. So when I look at my camera, I can see all those trees there. Okay, and as you can see, I have random variation between them. You can make this even bigger. So now you have like bigger variations. It works quite well. You can use speed trees files, or you can use whatever you want. Once you're happy with trees, maybe we can add just one more, like this push. Okay. So once you're happy with trees, maybe the next thing you want to do is to add, let's say, rocks, or you want to add finer surfaces or grass, even grass, right? So that is also very simple. Now you can go here to these paint details. And here, it is kind of the same thing. You click on edit details, add detail mesh, and here you can select some grass. I believe I have something. Grass, there you go. So I can take, let's say this one, for example, and here you can control the size. So this is probably quite big. So I'm going to set this one to 0.1 to 0.5, and same with the height. You can remap them anytime. Okay, add. So now if I go, let's go to another area where there is no much trees, like here. There you go. I'm adding grass. Might be too small, perhaps. So you can always edit this. And if you set this one to back to 1 and 2, 1 and 2, there you go. Now you can see the grass that I'm adding. And it's kind of the same thing. You can paint, or you can remove. You can add multiple ones. So let's choose this one. Oh, that one is not grass. So let's take that one, and then you can just paint to add more of this grass. Same deal, right? You have the brush size, you have the opacity, so you can add more or less. So this is basically how you add grass. But again, this works with any type of object. Sorry, actually I was painting with the wrong one. Yeah, this is different, but now it's just too crazy. Okay. Yeah, you can use this with rocks, or you can actually use it with whatever. I mean, of course, this is going to look nice if you have a nice looking grass. This one is okay, so, it's fine. So yeah, you can just edit details and add something that is not grass. So let's add this geometry. I think this is one probably too big. Okay, add. And now if I paint with this one, I'm just adding those chairs or stools, which is definitely not great. Let me edit this. I'm going to add the same. Oops, sorry. I want to edit it. I'm going to set the size to be always the same, because this object cannot deform, of course, because it's, it's a normal stool. I mean, you can, but change the size perhaps, but not the deformation. So let me decrease this one. So now I'm adding just a few. Minimum is 1, I believe. So that's pretty much what you get. So yeah, that's too much. What is the minimum? 0. Let's do 0.1. There you go. There you go. So now we're adding just a few tools here and there. So this is pretty cool for any object that you want to scatter, really. And as you can see, it adapts to the terrain. So that's how you use the terrain tools. Of course, there is much more to it, but this is kind of the essentials. And this is pretty much what you use. I mean, very simple tools. It's gonna look funky now. It is nice to have trees that you know the scale, because now you can see that these things are massive. So yeah, maybe we can do 0.1, 0.2, 0.1, 0.2, and now they are gonna be a little bit deformed, but there you go. You can start adding these things here in context, and everything looks cool. So yeah, this is just a gist of these terrain tools, but as you can see, you can create very quickly terrain shapes, terrain textures, and then populate the terrains with trees, grass, and rocks, and other objects. And yeah, again, I wouldn't use these terrain tools to create the most advanced terrains, even though I guess you could, but yeah, I would rely more on simulations of erosion and all of that, and that is something that you can do in Houdini height fields or other applications designed to build terrains.